All right, so welcome back to Happy Hour with Heather and Guest. I'm that other dude, Andrew, and today I'm joined by Alscalaphus from the band. It's pronounced Forlesen?
I say Forlesen. I've heard Forlesen. I'm not going to correct anybody. I'm
Okay,
honestly
well,
sure what the proper one is.
either Forlesen or Forlesen, however you'd like to decide for yourself. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Um, Now we actually off mic just got through discussing how the label that the album has been released on is in Italy,
That's correct.
but you're located in the U.S.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm in. I'm just outside of Portland, Oregon.
gotcha. Um, so the album we're gonna discuss is called Black Terrain. It's the sophomore album of the group, and it was released in October, I believe October 28th. Um,
That's correct.
so it is out there. You should definitely pick it up. Um, if you're not as familiar with I'm going to say for Leeson now. If you're not as familiar, it's got sort of elements of black metal, death metal, doom metal, but it's much more than that, I would say. Um, and I know the majority of the members of the group have all sort of had previous musical experiences.
All of
So,
us, yeah.
so what was the genesis of this particular group?
The genesis of this project is myself and uh, Bezalith. We both were. We'd been friends for a while. We had both been a live part of Botanist at one point. That was a long way back. But, even after our involvement with that project had ended, I had I had wanted to work with her for a bit, and I'd kind of been bugging her about it a little bit, and eventually, we kind of came upon an idea that it felt like, that she said yes to.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I didn't know if there was what the story was. But that's cool.
you
Like
know,
you sort of, I'm willing to give bands like that much more credibility because I feel like they've been in the game before and now they're doing what they really sort of want to be doing now that they've had a chance to sort of if you're on your second band or your third band or your next iteration that it's usually closer to what you had envisioned. um,
hopefully whatever, so, at least speaking for myself, but I imagine most artists feel this way. Hopefully whatever you're doing right then feels like the truest expression of what you want to be saying, and we that evolves and develops.
sure.
You know, I'm always most excited about the album that I'm making now.
Right.
But but yeah, I can look back at the history of music that I've made and various things, and like see common threads there that made their way into this, and feel like, oh, this is the maturing of that.
Yeah, well, what's cool is I feel like if you're a fan of any of the categories that I discussed, and by the way, it's not, I say this all the time. I feel like those categories exist to give people something to argue about because you could easily categorize it differently. I think the song that I resonated with most was Strega,
Hmm.
because I think it had more of the doom elements to it, which I think is in my wheelhouse more. Um,
Hmm.
but it was nice to sort of go through it and recognize, like, okay, if someone is more into like the black metal or death metal elements, that the other songs definitely play to those strengths. So, yeah, I mean,
uh,
for me
yeah,
personally,
you know um it's interesting that you mentioned death metal. I can hear, there's definitely kind of the death doom aspect at the during the last half of, or like last, yeah, I guess roughly last half of Herod Earth. But I would say overall, I wouldn't. I mean, we're influenced by all sorts of stuff, but that isn't a big part of the sound in my mind. But that said,
Yeah, well,
I want to get to have their experience of the music.
let me preface this by
Sorry, go ahead.
saying, let me preface. Well, hold on, let me just put my thing on work mode so that I don't get texts interrupting us. Um, the categories that were listed were on Bandcamp, so
Ah,
that's whatever they whoever create whoever put that on. I guess that was the easiest way to categorize it. So I don't think the album is it contains elements of all this stuff, but I don't think you could use them specifically and be like, oh well, this song is clearly death metal influenced. Um,
I see
so
what you're saying. Yeah, and I certainly not trying to argue with you on any of that, but it's more, I think we are decidedly difficult to categorize, and that's, it's not that we're doing that to be tricky or something, but it's more just that is uh, that's what moves through us. That's what we want to make is something that uh, we haven't heard done quite this way before, and so that is drawing from all sorts of different things that we like and that inspire us, and that um, making all of those things, even if one track sounds different from another, and they're all going to, having it feel like that's all kind of part of the same band, even if it's going all these different places.
well, I mean you definitely do that. The sound, the music that you're creating is unique. Um, it is, whatever combination of elements that influence all of you come together really well. So it's definitely great jams. I would recommend Black Terrain, which is out now, and then the previous album, which the name escapes me. Um,
It's Hierophant Violent.
but both are available on Bandcamp. I know in other probably streaming platforms, but yeah, it didn't sound like anything else. So I think you definitely hit the nail right on the head with regard to that. Um, and it worked really well together. Like it was interesting because there was a part of me that was like, okay, they're coming together from different bands. I wonder who's bringing what to the table. Um, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, none of this matters. What matters is that the songs are good and that you should listen to them. At the end of the day, that's really the only important thing. I mean, you and I could sit here and talk for hours about like what bands we like to listen to and where the influences might have been and who was who ultimately was biting off whose style back in 1973. But at the end of the day, really the fact is like if you put on Black Terrain, you'll find something that you enjoy. um, that's my 2 cents.
I mean, thank you, and yeah, there's uh, that's probably true. There is probably at least something within it that most people would find to enjoy. There's a lot of other stuff in there too. So you have to be someone that is, you know, at least open to a broad array of experience and kind of going on that journey. Um, but but yeah, there's it's we've heard the word cinematic thrown around, and I think that feels fairly accurate. It's pretentious as it might sound. Another word we've sort of discussed is microcosmic. And just but really in terms of both sort of world building music, like something that you kind of go into and inhabit, but it also being kind of like it's sort of capturing capturing the great and the small, or reaching for that.
And the other good thing is, I feel like because it's so richly textured, you can go back and listen to it a bunch of times and discover new things. Um, so I'm looking forward to, even though Strega immediately played to my sensibilities. I'm looking forward to going back and checking out the other tracks and listening to them a couple of times just to see how everything is put together.
Cool. That's definitely the intent. Hopefully it's something that speaks to someone on the first time. But you know, my favorite albums are things that I've listened to hundreds of times, and maybe the 150th time still caught some new detail and go like, oh, I didn't recognize that was referring back to there, or there's just like this little texture I never knew was in the music before. So um, that's uh, that's something that's exciting to me, and that I hope that other people can enjoy too.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've definitely achieved that here.
Thank you.
I think people will. I think it will resonate with people on the first listen because the songs are good. But I think there's also the depth that they can go back and find new things. So I think you've achieved the goal in doing that.
For this time.
I would imagine you're probably working on new music as well.
Indeed. Yeah, I laugh just because it's go okay, yeah, that's that music was executed exactly as we hoped it would be, and now we don't have to do that again.
Right. Well, it's. I remember reading something that Henry Rollins said when he was in Black Flag, and that he's Greg Ginn, the primary songwriter and guitarist. Henry was like, "Look, maybe we should slow down a little bit and not be as different on the next album, so that our fans have time to catch up." He was saying because they kept putting out so much work, and it kept being so radically different from the previous thing. But
Mhm.
Greg was in the mindset of I just want to keep making new stuff that challenges me.
Mhm.
Um, so it was interesting how there was that sort of that disconnect. But I know what you mean. It's like you work on something, it's done, and now it's time to do the new thing.
Sorry,
Yeah, are we breaking up a little?
you were cutting out for a moment here, but go ahead. I think I hear you now.
Yeah, it's you work on something, and by the time it comes out, you've been working on it for long enough. So, I hope we're not having difficulties.
I think I got the majority of what you were saying, and I
Yeah,
apologize
it wasn't.
sometimes out here.
It's all good. It wasn't that important anyway. It was just about when you're an artist, you want to keep working on the new stuff.
Indeed. And I think that there's you know, I mean, so far you know, in putting out Black Terrain, a whopping 4 songs, we tripled the amount of music we have out in the world.
There you
We now have 6 songs, which is, an hour and a half of music. And there is over another hour of music that is in the process of being recorded, and more music than that is begun being written. I think within all of that, there are things that can be pointed to as core components of the band's sound, but you know, uh, I mean, really just following inspiration, and especially when you're trying to do, it's not doing something new just for the sake of doing something new, but if you're making something new, then I can understand that some people may fall in love with, like, oh, you did this thing that I haven't heard before, I want to hear more of that. And but that's not the place that was born from, or I'm no longer living in the place that was born from. But well, anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, 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 no. Please keep going. This is about you, not about me.
um Gosh, I don't know. I mean, there's there's certainly a lot of bands out there that it's like, oh, I much prefer their early material, and then there's other bands that they were developing throughout their whole career, and stayed really interesting the whole time. Or some bands where they put out, it's like, oh, I loved their first 2 albums, wasn't into their third album, loved their fourth album. or onward like that. So I think at the point that we are feel like we're repeating ourselves, it's probably time to stop. But that said, it's also not not feeling like we need to you know just uh, just find some way to be original just for the sake of it. It's just doing what feels inspired, following the muse.
Absolutely. Well, I think you've done that with Black Terrain, and I'm glad you're working on new music. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you have any gigs lined up, or if you're planning on playing live at any point, or if you're already
Well,
doing that.
we have tentative plans for next year. Nothing solidified yet. We are geographically dispersed throughout the U.S. One of our members is on the East Coast, and the other three of us are on the West Coast. So it takes some configuring to arrange to play live. But we used to all live in the same city together, and we've all played live fairly extensively. So it is an aspiration for the band that we're going to make happen and should be next year.
Cool. Well, in the meantime, there's Black Terrain, which is out. There's and I apologize, I forgot the previous album's name again. I know it's with an H.
Hierophant Violent.
So both of them are out on Bandcamp, and my guess is other streaming platforms you can find them. I know you're on social media, so if people want to find you, Forlesen, it's on. I know Instagram, um, probably Facebook, Twitter, the usual suspects.
Yep.
So if you want information, follow them on social media. It's great to know that you're going to be at least the in plans are in motion to try and play live next year, depending on the logistics. But I'm glad that this album is out. I'm glad there's new music on the way. And yeah, just keep following that muse.
Indeed. Onwards.
Whatever analogy works best with the muse. uh, I think perhaps we may have gotten garbled in the last one. I was just talking about following the muse.
Yeah, indeed. No, I'm looking for or receiving inspiration. Not sometimes that involves looking, sometimes that just involves being receptive and getting out of the way. Some combination thereof.
Well, I wish you all the luck with that. Keep making great music. And thank you
Thanks
so
so much.
much for taking the time to speak with me.
I really appreciate it, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Have a good one.
You too.